Welcome to the Stormwater Assessment Meeting. Kyle Stevens from Stantec Consulting Services will begin the presentation at 6:05. The presentation will be followed immediately by a question and answer session. Please feel free to submit any questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and opening the Q&A window. During the Q&A session, I will direct each question to the appropriate party for a verbal response. Additionally, you can find general information and a list of frequently asked questions at www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater. Welcome to the Stormwater Assessment Meeting. Kyle Stevens from Stantec Consulting Services will begin the presentation at 6:05. The presentation will be followed immediately by a question and answer session. Please feel free to submit any questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and opening the Q&A window. During the Q&A session, I will direct each question to the appropriate party for a verbal response. Additionally, you can find general information and a list of frequently asked questions at www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater. Welcome to the Stormwater Assessment Meeting. Kyle Stevens from Stantec Consulting Services is about to begin the presentation. The presentation will be followed immediately by a question and answer session. Please feel free to submit any questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and opening the Q&A window. During the Q&A session, I will direct each question to the appropriate party for a verbal response. Additionally, You can find general information and a list of frequently asked questions at www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater. Kyle, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. Tonight I'll be talking about the stormwater rate study that we've conducted for the City of Fort Lauderdale. And stormwater, I guess to start off, we're really talking about the precipitation that falls from the sky, or in the case of Fort Lauderdale being a coastal community, some of the water that can inundate the system from high tide events. And what we'll be talking through today is a series of investigations that we've conducted on behalf of the city that incorporate several distinct elements. So first to be the revenue sufficiency study. What this is really concerned with is understanding the amount of dollars that we need, the cost requirements to run the stormwater system on an annual basis and for the next 10 years. We'll next look at the cost allocation, or how do we break up that annual cost and measure customers' usage of the stormwater system. We will then talk about fee structure and how our recommendation for a hybrid fee structure for next year to charge a stormwater. And then finally, we'll talk about the method of billing. It's currently on the utility bill. The recommendation that I'll talk in a second will be to move to the tax bill for next fiscal year. So let's jump right into things. The first section is the revenue requirements. And with the revenue requirements, we've got several elements that we've incorporated into our forecasting model. And so the first is the annual operations and maintenance of the stormwater system. That's currently about $11.5 million in the current year we're in, and it's funded through the current rate that's in place. Next is the renewal and replacement capital projects. These are cash-funded projects that total about $4 million a year. They're funded out of the current rate. And then the third element that was brought into the study as it was conducted were items that were identified in Fort Lauderdale's master plan that looks at the entirety of the city and where the greatest needs are. And this first phase of the master plan would invest in the neighborhoods that are shown below here. There's 7 of them. But the overall assessment and the fee we're talking about today invest citywide in operations and maintenance and capital projects. And so this is just the timing of these first neighborhoods. And the goal of this analysis is to figure out how much resources we need on an annual basis in order to sustainably run this system and provide the level of stormwater service to all the citizens of Fort Lauderdale. Now, this next slide is a dashboard view of the model that we've created. And what it does is it looks at several elements, and it's very similar to your own personal banking account. This graphic in the middle here, revenues versus expenditures, shows in orange the cash coming out of the enterprise fund. And then in black shows the revenue coming in. And in this particular scenario, we've shown a diagnostic view where we've held the rate increases flat going forward. What that shows is that as we go forward in each and every year, there's a gap between the cash going out and the cash coming in, which grows over time. And this is a fundamentally unsustainable situation as shown by the reserve levels off to the right, which go negative pretty quickly into the 2022 area. And that's primarily been driven by the need to make large investments in the system. I mentioned those a second ago on the slide. They're driving the need for increased cost. And so in order to arrive at a sustainable solution, this next screenshot shows what the rate increases would need to be on an annual basis in order to provide enough resources so that the stormwater utility can continue to operate, as well as make some of those larger generational investments. And what this shows is that in FY21, we would need a 54% increase in revenues. And then in the future, which is set and dictated by council each year, I've shown a projection of what likely rate increases are. If everything happens as we forecast it, of course, as we move forward into the future, oftentimes assumptions and the reality on the ground will change. Well, this will show us some inflationary levels of increases. And then currently the city projects the need to do another large set of capital investments in 2026, which would be bond funded. And you can see an increase associated with those in 26. Now, importantly, this is an enterprise fund. And what that means is that all the revenues that come into this fund can only be used for stormwater. Now, as I move on, the cost allocation will take that revenue requirement we just talked about and bring it down to how we allocate it to parcels. And so off to the left here, I've got a number of elements of characteristics of parcels that stormwater utilities throughout Florida and throughout the country will use in order to assess stormwater costs. And so the first one, taxable value, when a utility is just getting set up or hasn't been set up like me, it's not too uncommon to find that stormwater costs are being paid for out of the ad valorem taxes I would argue that there's not a large correlation between property values and stormwater. And so as we go down this list, dwelling units, the gross area, the gross size of the parcel, pervious area, and pervious area, these elements are much more closely tied to the runoff coming off of the parcel or the parcel's overall benefit of the stormwater utility. And as we conducted the study for Fort Lauderdale, I put a couple pictures over here of some of the flooding that's taken place. One of the key things that was discovered as we talked to staff that knows the system best is that a lot of work was taking place on the roadway. And one of the key benefits of having a sustainable stormwater operation in Fort Lauderdale going forward is keeping the roads clear and passable for both precipitation type events and also for those king tides and larger tidal events that are happening with greater frequency. Those will inundate the system and, in fact, in certain cases will come up onto the roadway. And so for that purpose, one of the metrics that we brought in is trip generation rates for this particular study. And that essentially looks at how a parcel benefits from having those free and passable roads in the community. For an exploration of trip generation rates, this particular slide shows how we essentially put different parcels into different categories based on their land use. So we're not trying to exactly determine the number of trips at a given home. More, we're looking at how different large land uses that are assigned by the property appraiser differ in their benefit from the roadway network. And so how this works is on a single family home, on average, is about 9.44 trips per average weekday. At a gas station, it's about 845 per 1,000 square feet. If we talk about a supermarket, it's about 106 per 1,000 square feet. And so it's a convenient metric that we compare against different customer classes that allows us to understand how the benefit is derived from those free and passable streets. These were gathered from the 10th generation ITE trip generation manual, which is the industry standard for determining these metrics. If we move forward, what has been recommended in the City of Fort Lauderdale with regards to the rate is actually a hybrid approach, which looks at using both the trip generation rate and the current structure, which is based on the effective impervious area on a parcel. And what we have conducted as part of this analysis is a cost of service analysis, which breaks the annual cost into two components. Stormwater is often thought about delivering two really key services to the community, and that's dealing with the quantity of runoff, so the gallons that we need to deliver to receiving bodies, but also the quality and doing things where we're dealing with trash and impaired runoff so that we can meet the state and federally mandated regulations that we have for managing stormwater in an urban area. How we conducted that is we went on a line-by-line item basis with the fiscal year 21 budget with city staff to understand in each and every department how their activities relate to either quantity or quality. The graphic off the left here shows you the quality in the light blue, and in the dark blue, the quantity. These are the departments off to the left, and when we sum all of those up in total, what we arrived at is roughly currently 20% of the cost is quality related, 20% is quantity related. And so what we did with that is attached and used that metric in order to break the annual revenue requirement onto the trip generation, attached to the quality, and on the quantity, attached to the impervious area of the current rate structure. What I'd like to next is just talk a little bit about the mechanics of how that exactly works. And so this graphic right here, I'm going to start with the top. This is the total amount of the assessment, $31.3 million in FY21. 80% of it will remain on the current structure, which first and foremost places each and every parcel into one of three customer categories. It's either single family, improved, or vacant parcels. And then once they're in a customer category, they are assessed based on two different metrics, depending what you're in. So if it's a single family home, it'll be the number of dwelling units that are present. If it's going to be an improved parcel or a vacant parcel, it's based on the gross acreage or the size of the parcel. And then off to the right, I have shown the relevant rates for the fiscal year 2021 assessment. The latter two shown on a per acre basis, the first one shown on a per dwelling unit basis. And then additionally, the remaining 20% of the cost is on the trip structure, which is $6.2 million. We've divided that by the total number of trips. When we look at all parcels and all land uses within the city, comes out to about $4.19 per trip as a rate. What we then do is look at each individual parcel's trip generation rate, which, as I explained a second ago, is based on how many average trips they're generating, there is about 63 different land use categories that are active in Fort Lauderdale that we have matched up with ITE trip generation rates to give us the total number of trips being generated from each parcel, which is an indication of the benefit derived from stormwater. And then for each parcel, we blend those two together. So it has a trip component and a current structure component that generates the total stormwater assessment for fiscal year 2021. So I move to the next few slides. We'll go through the customer impacts to understand how this will impact a number of different customers. And so in this first example is a single family home with one dwelling unit. I'm going to stick on the right side of this. It will be, as we move to the next section, an annual assessment section. The total annual cost here, monthly, it's currently $14. The adjustment that is being proposed and recommended for fiscal year 21 would move that to $21.52. That's a change of $7.52 per month. And it's helpful to remember this includes the revenue enhancement we just talked about when we looked at the RSA and the amount of capital investments this system needs to make. So rates are moving up. This is the impact for single family homes. How does that compare? What I've done in this slide is put together a municipal peer survey of other utilities and what they're currently charging single family homes in their service area. And so currently Fort Lauderdale is at $14. The updated is shown over here at $21.52. And what I want to point out on a survey like this is oftentimes there's different drivers that drive the rate up for different areas. One of the things that we notice as we do this work around the state is oftentimes on the right side of this, you'll see many of the communities are coastal communities that are making investments in order to meet their specific demands, which are often very different than other stormwater utilities. When you have that coastal influence, it oftentimes costs more. And so we'll see those utilities over here. Also, we see these rates moving up on an annual basis. Many of these rates have been marching up in order to meet the regulatory requirements and the needs of their communities. With regards to multifamily, this is a condo example. What we've done is put the current cost on a per dwelling unit basis. That's about $355 monthly. The updated rate would calculate for this particular one at about $631 for a change of about $267. It's really important to note that each individual condo will have a little bit of a different rate because of its underlying characteristics. And what we mean by that is the trip rates will be applied on a per dwelling unit basis, but the overall common area will be split up to the individually owned condos based on their effective living area. And so the effective rate charged each one will be slightly different depending on the exact characteristics of the property. Here's an institutional example. So a church, the current fee on a monthly basis is $119.06. The calculated fee is $210.53. That gives a change of $91.47 if looked at on a monthly basis. And again, this is being driven partly on the impervious area, partly on the trips generated for this particular facility. And the graphic down at the bottom here kind of shows the relative split between those two different sides of the rate for this particular property. That will become important as we talk about this next one. So this next one is a commercial example, a supermarket. As I mentioned, it has a pretty high trip generation rate per 1,000 square feet. What this shows is the current rate's about $267.36 monthly. Based on the calculator rate, that would be $1,882.05 on a monthly basis. That's a change of about $1,614. And what we can see here is this one really benefits from those free and passable streets, and the rate structure is taking that into account when it generates the rate. Now, the final section I'll talk about is how stormwater rates are collected. So I mentioned earlier, they're currently on the utility basis of collection, which means on a monthly basis, most customers receive a utility bill with their water, sewer, and garbage. The recommendation has been to move the stormwater fees to the non-ad valorem process, which means it will come on the tax bill for next fiscal year. Those typically are sent out in the first part about November. And the reasons for that is because it makes it much easier to bill stormwater accurately. And so we are billing directly to parcels as opposed to trying to match up to utility billing accounts, or in the case of condominiums, assessing or giving a bill to an HOA that then is divided. So it allows the city to directly bill. Those transitions will begin to take place in mid-October as it moves over to the tax bill, where the utility billing will stop and it'll pick up on the tax bill for each and every parcel. For comparison of other municipalities, on the green dots, I'm showing ones that are currently on the utility basis as of this year. In the orange triangles, showing utilities in the state that are on an assessment basis. And what we're seeing in the industry is a movement from municipalities to charge on the assessment base, that non-ad valorem assessment that we're recommending for Fort Lauderdale, due to some of those benefits I just talked about. It's much easier to maintain a database and charge it correctly. With regards to this study and the impacts, one of the things that we have put forward is a customer viewer. And so this is on the City of Fort Lauderdale's website. I put a link down at the bottom of this. It'll be on my final page as well for this presentation. It allows any customer to be able to type in their address and go and look at the exact characteristics and units that were evaluated as part of the assessment and the overall assessment for each parcel in the next fiscal year. And the data that was used to derive these assessments was based on the Broward County property appraisers data. And so that will show in this little window as shown over here when you bring up a property on that. And so with that, Jason, I'll conclude and defer back over to you if there's any questions to take those.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. For anyone who may have joined late, you can submit questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll go ahead and jump right into the first question here. Will the stormwater/multifamily monthly charge on our condo association City of Fort Lauderdale municipal service bill go away, increase, or decrease? Kyle, I'm going to let you go ahead and answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the change of how we're collecting stormwater, proposing to collect stormwater in fiscal year 20, it will disappear from the condo association or HOA's bill in mid-October and then transition over to each individual parcel's owner. And as I showed in that example, there is a difference in each exact calculation, but the average condo will see an increase in their bill once it's broken out to the individual bill.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, I read the state of Florida is fining the City of Fort Lauderdale $1.8 million for a series of massive sewage spills that have sent toxic sewage onto streets and into waterways since December. Now, after doing further research, these sewage spills continued to happen into 2020. Are these factors also impacting the stormwater assessments? Kyle, I'll again let you take that.
Yeah, and feel free to add if there's any from the city. From my thought process is that these are completely separate enterprise funds, and so that particular comment was geared toward the wastewater system, which is the accounting is completely separate for. So I don't believe there's any impact or any crossover, but Jason, feel free if there's anything you know about.
Nope, I would agree wholeheartedly.
So Jason, this is Anisha. I can add that is correct. They are not included. There are in-kind projects that the state allows us to do in lieu of paying those fines.
Perfect, thank you, Anisha. The next question is, the presentation slides contain a lot of great information. Are these available anywhere so we can look at them and study them? The answer to that is yes, they are available. They were posted, I believe, this afternoon to www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater. All right. The next question is, were these metrics determined before coronavirus? And Kyle, I'll let you go ahead and take that one.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the actual genesis of this study started in 2016 and has been an ongoing dialogue with the commission, as well as multiple groups within the community and the public at large to generate the structure that was presented today. The analysis was done pre-COVID, but I will tell you, I don't believe there's any metrics that would change post-COVID. And so the trip generation rates were based on ITE, which does a rolling survey for the last 20 years or so of different land uses and the trip impacts that they have on the street network or the use of the street network.
Perfect. All right, the next question is, if 2026 is the next increase, will there be no increase in the amount assessed on my trim notice until 2026? If there is an increase between now and 2026, how will that be calculated, and what will be the amount of the increase, and when will the increases occur?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we showed that slide to give an understanding of the long-term outlook that we currently have, which is based on the best information we have right now, as well as the city's plans for investments. The assessment rate is determined annually, though, by the city commission. And the city commission makes a decision annually and votes on the level of that assessment. The current projection would show small inflationary increases until that decision of that larger investment in the future in 2026.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. The numbers don't look horrible, but can you show the difference from ITE versus ERU comparisons? And it looks like there's a follow-up question there. Why did you use the ITE versus the ERU comparison?
Yeah, and so that's a great question. ERU refers to equivalent residential unit, and that's a widely used form of generating stormwater rates within the industry. It basically looks at impervious area and comes up with the average amount of impervious area on a single family home, relates that to other customer classes. What we found in Fort Lauderdale is there definitely is activities related to the water coming off of properties. But the real uniqueness here is that most of the work and the benefit being derived from the system is happening on those streets. The water quality activity, the dealing with the tidal influences that oftentimes will come up through the stormwater network onto the street. That's where we felt that ITE in the trip generations really added to our ability to clearly articulate the benefit that properties receive and the different benefits that property receive. And so that's why we use that here as a new innovative structure to try to match the underlying characteristics of Fort Lauderdale.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question is, my trim notice shows an assessment of $300. Is the real rate $258?
So it depends on the exact parcel that you have. The example that I showed would be for a single family home with one dwelling unit. If it had additional dwelling units per the property appraiser, it'd be higher. If it was a different type of parcel, a non-single family parcel, and I guess I should say we're depending on the property appraiser to clearly articulate what type of land use it is, the rate would vary depending on those different types of parcels.
Perfect, thank you. And I will just add to that, if you'd like to discuss or ask a question about your specific parcel, please feel free to email me at stormwaterrate@fortlauderdale.gov. Again, that's stormwaterrate@fortlauderdale.gov. The next question is, can we get a copy of the recording for our homeowners association? And the answer to that, I believe, is yes. The recording from last Thursday's meeting was posted today, and once this becomes available, you should be able to pull that from the city website. Again, the address for that is www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater. All right, the next one came up is, shouldn't the number of trips be the same for a 2-bedroom single-family home or a 2-bedroom condo? Secondly, how is the storm charge for an 8,000 square foot single-family home the same as a 1,500 square foot family home, single-family home?
Yeah, so they're great questions. From ITE's trip generation, I'll break them down. The first question was a comparison between single-family, I believe, and condo units. So ITE, who does these surveys and looks over time at the different trip generation rates for different land uses, has identified that there is a differential between a single-family home and a condo unit. And I should mention that they're really recording all kinds of trips to the household. And so you can imagine with a condominium, the maintenance of that with a single family would be on each unit, but with a condo, they all benefit from the single trips for maintenance. So I'm just thinking of examples of different things that you might have. One trip to the overall premise that's accounting for what would be a single trip to a single family home. And so there's differences in those two classes that have been captured in this study and in ITEs. The second question was, why is there no differential between single-family homes of different size? The current structure does it on a per-dwelling unit basis, and that's the real scaling metric. And so it does account for if there's, say, a mother-in-law suite or other dwelling units on the parcel that do increase the overall size of it or the overall usage of the roadway network. But the smaller, when you look at the totality of Fort Lauderdale and single-family homes, the differences between one home to the next were not great enough to come up with a unique rate or the administrative complications of a unique rate for each property. And so for that reason, the city currently charges a relatively uniform rate to single-family homes, and we have proposed continuing that into the future with the new structure.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. All right, the next question is, why not keep the fee on the water bill with the increase instead of adding it to the property tax bill? And I know you covered that a little bit, but go ahead and dive into that a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. Be glad to dive into that. The real thing here is that it allows for some simplification and some direct billing where it wasn't possible before. And the largest one I mentioned was the condominiums. And so right now, the city cannot directly bill certain stormwater users. And so in those cases of condominiums, oftentimes it's one utility account serving the entire building. The city will bill that account, and then the HOA or condominium association will divide the bill up. What this allows us to do is directly bill those customers individually. It additionally allows for a much greater level of accuracy on a go-forward basis because we can bill and we can update the stormwater roll when the property appraiser makes those annual changes to their roll so that we're getting the most accurate data and understanding how to properly account for changes on parcels.
Excellent, thanks. All right, the next question is, what is the increase in 2026? What is the cause of the increase, I believe is what they're looking for.
Yeah, the cause of the increase, and let me just pull up the slide there, it'd probably be easy to talk about if we bring that up real quick. So the cause of the increase in 2026 is to meet ongoing investments in the community. So down here in these bottom two charts, what I'm showing is capital investments in the city. And I talked about one up front here. There's a near-term need. I mentioned those 7 projects. The master plan that the City of Fort Lauderdale has conducted in the past identified a number of different areas of need in the community. And so what this projects is the best thinking we have right now is that we would need to make additional investments in the stormwater system in other areas that would likely come in the form of a bond that the city would issue and would then begin to make ongoing payments to repay that bond. And so this increase fundamentally represents the same as in FY21. It is to keep enough liquidity and to meet the ongoing debt payments for that bond in FY26. Now, the main thing I want to mention here is it's not set in stone. So as these models are updated and the revenue sufficiency is updated on an annual basis with the city, we change this forecast and bring in the most up-to-date assumptions that we have. And the City Commission has the ultimate say on the level of these increases each year. Excellent.
Thank you. All right, I own a single-family home with a cottage, and my charge is $516.53. I'm the only person living on the property. The fee at present is a $14 charge on my water bill. How is this equitable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so as I mentioned on single-family homes, the scaling metric is dwelling units, and that's something that is readily accessible through the property appraisers database that allows us to determine which homes and which properties have those extra dwelling units. And so the fee accounts for that. The current fee should actually account for those dwelling units as well in that case. And so it sounds like the fee might be a little bit lower if there's multiple dwelling units present, or the updated PA data may have those updated units recorded in it. And so it does, though, based on our analysis and the hybrid approach, there would be additional benefit that those parcels receive by having more dwelling units. And so that's why you see some of that increased fee there.
Thank you. All right, what was the alternative to doing it this way and pre-billing people for January through September 2021 and every year after, basically? Could a bond cover these costs as opposed to putting this on the tax bill of those who are on fixed or lower incomes to the tune of $300 a month, and a business that are struggling now assessed at a tune of a potential couple $1,000s a month? Fee structure change is one thing, but additional amounts are why people are complaining and have to be heavy-handed with it on the property tax bill and risk losing the property if not paid.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned some of the big benefits, and the reason that it's not just the City of Fort Lauderdale, but we see this with a number of cities that are transitioning to the non-ad valorem process to collect stormwater revenue. And there's really those benefits of directly billing as well as ongoing accuracy to make sure we're billing this correctly on an ongoing basis. The alternatives that I showed you a second ago were either to keep it on the utility billing approach or to move it to a non-ad valorem assessment. I would like to mention 2 things. First, I showed the bill impact. That is before the 4% discount as well. Any tax bill, if you pay that online, that bill would be a little bit lower by about 4% for the early discount. Additionally, for properties that currently have a mortgage, oftentimes these types of taxes and fees are amortized throughout the year. And so those would actually still be spread out, even if it was on an annual assessment. So just two other thoughts related to that as well.
Absolutely. And then I do also want to mention the billing is for October through September of 2021, correct? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. And then someone is asking, can we see the answers to these questions somewhere? And the answer to that is yes. You should see at the top left-hand side of the question and answer tab. It should say open and answered, and if you click on the answered, you should be able to see the answers to the questions if it has been written. If you're looking for an answer, the verbal answer, once the video is posted, you'll be able to go back and scroll through the questions to find the response you're looking for. The next question is, how long and how many years will these assessments last?
Yeah, so the stormwater utility is best thought of kind of like a water and sewer utility. They're very similar types of activities, a bit different here, but they're ongoing. The city has ongoing needs to do, has personnel dedicated to stormwater, has ongoing maintenance, operational costs, as well as capital investments. And so the expectation is that this assessment would continue on an annual basis into the future.
Perfect. All right, the next question is, the trip calculation was designed to be used for transportation and roadway creation. It is a leap of faith to apply it to stormwater projects. How are western areas of the city without road flooding or docks being credited?
And that's correct in the sense that this is an innovative approach, applying trip generation rates. It has been done a couple other places within the country. A few utilities are out there. But really, again, this came to the table in thinking and looking at the problem deeply over a number of years as we've studied this, and recognizing the fact that Fort Lauderdale really is unique, and a coastal community such as this is unique in the way that the benefits of stormwater are conferred to property owners within the city. And so that's why it was used here and applied. There is, to the second part of that question, there is no consideration or thought for properties that are more inland. It's probably best to think about this as a fully interconnected system. The stormwater pipes run throughout the city and are really connecting almost all properties to one another as water is transmitted, received, and then ultimately deposited to the intercoastal, to the New River, to the ocean.
Perfect, thank you. All right, why are there two fees listed on the tax assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to the hybrid method that we've been talking about. And so for each property, the benefit that that property receives is based on two different ways the fee is looking at. One is the current method, which takes into account the impervious area, the hard surfaces on a property, really trying to identify what the runoff that the property is contributing to the stormwater system that the city has to manage and it's responsible for. And then the second part is trip generation, which is related to the benefits of those free and passable streets, as well as the water quality activities that take place in the street. And that was seen as a key area and a key benefit that including that in the fee is why you have that second component, but it is essentially looking at the benefits in two different ways for each parcel.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is, will the assessment in 2026 be in addition to this 2020 assessment, or will the 2026 replace the 2020 assessment?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the increases that I showed a second ago, again, the one caveat being their current projections based on the most current data, but those are the amount of increases in revenue that the stormwater utility would need in the future in order to provide for the full investment and sustainability of the system. And so what that would mean is the overall change in the level of the assessment going forward. And so I guess the question directly to the answer would be it would replace it, or it would be an increased assessment from the current level if those were approved by the City Commission.
Okay, thank you. How are businesses handled versus houses?
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to houses, and I'll use the term single-family homes, their fee structure has a little bit of a simplification with regards to about per dwelling unit basis, which means the majority of single-family homes have the same rate and have very similar benefits of the benefits of the stormwater utility. But when we start to talk about non-single-family properties, they can widely vary from one another. You can think of the difference between a car wash to a big industrial complex to a laundromat. Those are all commercial type uses, but look very, very different from their use and their impact on the stormwater system. And so the fee fundamentally resizes for each one of those parcels, determining first the amount of overall gross area on the parcel, and then secondly, the amount of trip generation to and from that parcel as a second criteria benefit. And so they're unique fees for each of those non-single family type uses.
Excellent. What is the long-term plan that is budgeted in 2026, and what infrastructure would be updated? So Rares, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to take that question, please.
Yeah, good evening. So we do have, between now and 2025, 2026, we do have 7 neighborhood improvements that we are working on, in addition to various CIPs, basically smaller projects for stormwater infrastructure. And then as part of the stormwater program, we developed an extensive modeling of the entire city. So we're going to be taking this model that we developed, a bunch of consultants developed, and we're going to be assessing different neighborhoods throughout the city and design basically infrastructure to serve those areas. So we'll continue to look at individual neighborhoods and develop solutions for those neighborhoods, in addition to obviously installing tidal valves along the shoreline neighborhoods, replacing infrastructure, and just continuing to upgrade the system overall.
Excellent. Thank you, Rares. Right, next question is it necessary to propose any tax increase for any reason now? Due to COVID, why not propose the increase in 2021?
And so 2 clarifications. First, this is a fee, not a tax, which is a distinction I want to make up front, because taxes can be used for anything, where fees like this one are dedicated completely to stormwater projects and operation and maintenance. And then I think the second part of that question was, why not in 2021? This actually is proposed to be in fiscal year 21, which would encompass the cost for next year. So the real changes coming this fall into next year. The other thing to mention is these costs haven't gone away. The city really fundamentally needs to make investments in the system, and that's what's been displayed as we talked about the first part of this analysis.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Just give me 1 second, sorry. Okay. So the next question is, in 2026, will there be another bond issued for the funds needed in 2026, therefore generating the bigger jump in fees?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And so these investments are very long-lived. The assets in stormwater typically 25, 30 years long, in longer in some instances. And so bonding is very appropriate to try to spread some of that cost out. And so the current projection shows that bond in FY21, as well as the projected bond in 2026. That increase is associated with paying for the debt service related to that. So the city would then make annual payments for interest and principal, but then also ensuring we have enough coverage, which is what the rating agencies look at to ensure that we can repay the debt. And we've got to maintain a certain level of revenue to do that, to ensure to bondholders we can borrow, and we're a good creditor.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Rares, this one is for you. When will the model be complete?
Yes, so the ICPR model, which is the software that we're using, that our consultants are using, it is virtually complete. It's very intensive and it covers the entire city. So in the first round, we basically inputted all the pipe works and all the infrastructure and all the conditions, water tables, etc. So we have the model up and running right now, but we use it to assess only 7 of the total neighborhoods in the city. So the same model will be used to assess the 7 more neighborhoods, or plus as many as we need them throughout the city. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit. So every couple of years, there's new buildings that they're getting built, new infrastructure is replaced. So when we take a look at one neighborhood, like let's say Victoria Park, we need to spend a little bit of money to update the model, bring it up to date with the new infrastructure, and basically run it and develop. So the short answer, the model is complete. It just needs to be tweaked every time we look at a neighborhood. And some neighborhoods do not require to be modeled. They don't have any flooding issues. The ones further up to the north by the FXE airport. So we have to basically look to see where most of the complaints are and what we know from our documentation where the flooding occurs, and talk to the neighbors. And that's how we are prioritizing the neighborhoods and using the model to develop solutions for the drainage.
Perfect. Thank you. The next one is for you as well, Rares. What does CIP refer to?
So CIP is basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's community investment projects. So they're small projects that have been planned probably for 4 to 5 years ahead of before they get implemented. So right now, every year I think Kyle referred to, we spend about $4 million in CIP projects. These are projects, for instance, the ones that we're doing this year that were put into the CIP budget about 5 years ago. So these are small, ranging from $200,000 to $1 million worth of stormwater improvements throughout the city. That's been validated. It's been documented as having a flooding issues. So we usually design them either in-house or using consultants, and we get them constructed. So they're the small drainage projects that we do on a yearly basis.
Perfect, thank you. All right, what green infrastructure will you be recommending for the community? Do we have anybody who can address that? I think that might be a better question for our Department of Sustainable Development, or is that something you can assist with, RARES?
I mean, I guess I can speak from the engineering as far as the stormwater master plans and neighborhood designs. We are using some pervious pavements in Dorsey and Dorsey Riverbend and Durs. A lot of the green infrastructure is basically reestablishing new swales, putting water quality structures. So before we discharge in the canal right now, the water just discharges in the North New River. We're gonna have these storm scepters that have been collecting the greases and oils from the road. So it's basically a lot of exfiltration trenches, reestablishment of swales, and in some areas we're gonna be using some pervious pavement, and ripping out the old pavement and putting in pervious pavement, which allows the water to go into the soil and filter out.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, and I believe this one's for you as well, RARES, how many neighborhoods are in Fort Lauderdale? And I believe the referencing, we said there were 7 neighborhoods in the upcoming phase for stormwater improvements. How many total neighborhoods are you evaluating?
That I honestly don't know the question. I know there is a lot of them throughout the city. I want to say there's probably at least 40 or so. But again, not all of them have stormwater issues. Probably like less than a third are known to have stormwater issues. Most of them seem to be doing okay. They're further up north where the elevations are higher and there's adequate infrastructure. So the 7 that we are looking at today and we're implementing, those are the worst ones that we know of. And there's a couple of very bad ones that are coming in the pipeline. But I don't know the answer as to how many specific neighborhoods are throughout the city. There is a map of them. We can find out and maybe post it online, the answer to that.
Perfect, thank you. So the next question is this stormwater assessment being used to fund the redundant sewer project? And I think we can answer this one pretty quickly here. Kyle, as you pointed out, this is a fee and it must be used for stormwater. So the stormwater assessment would not be able to fund the redundant sewer project.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
What was the equivalent residential unit value as far as square footage?
So the particular fee that is being proposed does not have, as I mentioned, an ERU basis like other stormwater fees do. It has a bifurcated basis between the dwelling units for single-family homes, gross acreage on all other parcels, and then trip generation rate. So I don't think that equivalency or that definition of an ERU that would be so prevalent in other stormwater utilities would be applicable in this particular situation.
Perfect, thank you. Is the fee being paid in advance, and why?
The fee is being put on the tax bill for next year. It's a big change. And so it comes on an annual basis like the other non-ad valorem as well as ad valorem taxes. And that covers the entirety of the year for stormwater, for the entire fiscal year for stormwater next year. As I mentioned, it does come as a lump sum to parcel owners. If it is a mortgage property, though, that is escrowed and typically broken out to monthly payments.
Perfect, thank you. And as for the and why, I think that's referring to why it was moved to the storm assessment or to the tax assessment, and is it being paid in that sum?
Yeah, and that's just, again, capture some of those benefits, being mainly more accurate, as well as another one I haven't mentioned is utility cutoffs. If a utility account is cut off or is stopped in the year, they don't make any more payments on the tax bill they make and continue to contribute towards stormwater. And so there are numerous numbers of benefits to moving that, and that's why the city is moving in that direction, as well as a number of other municipalities.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. In addition to the requested 54% increase in stormwater revenue and the requested 3% guaranteed annual increase, is there an estimate on how much a taxpayer will have to pay in bond interest?
There is an estimate. I can pull it up. I don't have it right at hand as far as the interest on those bonds. I will tell you that in the current market environment, governments in this utility are able to borrow at pretty low interest rates. They're about as low as they have been in a long time, kind of generationally low interest rates. What was the first part about that question, Jason? I apologize. I was thinking of the second one.
It was really just a one-parter. It was just looking for how much the taxpayer will have to pay in bond interest.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have it right offhand, but when the bond, probably the best answer is when the city goes out to market, which right now is forecasted likely in the January-February period, that will be determined by the interest rates that are prevailing at the market at that particular time. And so that will be solidified. If the market stays where it is, those are pretty low interest rates for a 30-year bond.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. The next question is any of the stormwater fees going to update the treatment facility? And again, the stormwater fee can only be used for stormwater, so that will not be used to update the treatment facility. How do I find out the exact cost of my stormwater bill for 2021?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the city has put on its website a viewer for the assessment, which will allow you to type in your address and find your exact property. It will show you the units that are associated with your parcel. Depending on the exact parcel that is, that's either the dwelling units or the gross square footage of the parcel, as well as the overall assessment for fiscal year 21.
Perfect, thank you. Is this something we can vote on? I understand it is needed. However, if my property is not within those needed areas, why would my taxes increase?
So the first answer to that question is no, it's at the commission's discretion. And so the commission will vote. I believe the exact date, Jason, if you have a hand, it's in September for the assessment here that we're talking about. I believe it's September 14th, if I recall correctly off the top of my head. But the other answer is the first 7 neighborhoods that we've shown are some of the critical neighborhoods. But the city will continue, and the fee does pay for O&M enhancements throughout the city. And it's best to think of this as a connected system, much like the water and wastewater systems, where at any given time, improvements may be in one neighborhood or on one street. But over time and over the life of the system, improvements are made all over the city as they're needed.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Next question is the assessment already in place for the future? Will the homeowner have an option or choice on how to be billed?
No, so the assessment is not currently in place. It will be voted on by the commission to be put in place for fiscal year 21, and it will apply for all parcels within the city.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So it looks like we're running low on time, so we're going to take one more question. And then if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to submit them at lauderserve, LAUDERSERVE .fortlauderdale.gov using the call center stormwater assessment issue type. Or for additional information, please visit www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater. All right, so this is a question, a repeat question that was missed earlier. Will the stormwater/multifamily monthly charge on our condo association's City of Fort Lauderdale municipal service bill go away, increase, or decrease?
Yeah, and to reiterate that one, it'll phase out for the HOA or for the homeowners association, the utility portion of the bill in mid-October, stretching through the fall. It will transition then to the tax bill for each individual condo parcel owner. That fee on average will increase. As I mentioned in our analysis, there are significant needs. which are putting pressure on the revenue needs of the utility. In 2021, the overall increase is about 54%, but each individual parcel will see a different increase based on its benefit of the stormwater utility.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kyle. All right, so thank you all for participating this evening. Again, please feel free to log on to www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater for additional information. Should you have any additional questions, please feel free to submit them at lauderserve.fortlauderdale.gov using the call center stormwater assessment issue type. In case you joined us late, we'll be hosting additional informational meetings on the proposed stormwater assessment. And again, you can please visit www.fortlauderdale.gov/stormwater for details. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.